It's a disappointing day here in Wisconsin. Obviously, you know what the revenue projections are, and that the Republicans were waiting on a pot of money to pay for their deficit in their budget, and it's not here. And it's actually a sad day for Wisconsin simply because the policies that we've seen for the past 4.5 years promoted by the governor and the Republican legislature, it's not working. The tax breaks are not working. The tax credits are not working. Everything from day one that the Republicans said they needed to jumpstart our economy, as the governor was focusing like a laser on jobs here in the state, it's clearly not working. The jobs are not being created, the revenue is not being generated, and that means it's not working here in Wisconsin. Well, if you take a look at other states around the country, they seem to be doing all right, and we're not. So I don't know at what point it's going to take the Republicans to realize that things like WEDC aren't working. The Republicans are going to have to start with their priorities. The Democrats, we're going to start with our priorities that my colleagues are going to talk about here in a minute. But clearly, we need to change what we're doing here in the state of Wisconsin because it's not working. Chris.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Taylor. And it is a sad day. It is a sad day. We are in this budget mess because of really bad decisions that this governor and legislative Republicans have made. They have not prioritized what the people, the state of Wisconsin, want them to prioritize, like K through 12, like our UW system, like long-term care. Instead, Governor Walker and legislative Republicans are more focused on his presidential campaign than doing what is right for the people of this state. And this budget sells out the people and the children of the state of Wisconsin. So what we need now for this Republican-dominated legislature to do, and for our colleagues on the Joint Finance Committee to do, is to use the existing revenues that we have to invest, to fill in these unnecessary cuts to K through 12, to fill in the cuts to the UW system, to fund our long-term care system, the services that our most vulnerable absolutely need every single day, seniors and individuals with disabilities. We need to reprioritize existing revenue to do what the people of the state of Wisconsin have told us so clearly they want us to do. They want us to fund our public education system. They want us to fund our incredibly successful long-term care priorities. So this is what the focus now needs to be from these Republican legislators, not the governor's presidential campaign. The focus needs to be on what the state of Wisconsin needs, and we have got to use these existing revenues, which we can do, to fund the things that are most important to our state. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm State Representative Gordon Hintz. Since the budget was introduced, we've been saying all along that this budget fails to prioritize core Wisconsin programs like K-12 education, the environment, long-term care, and our UW system. And how else can you have a state budget that actually increases spending yet guts the UW system by $300 million? The public obviously agreed that this budget did not reflect Wisconsin priorities, as we heard it around the state at public hearings, and as we've heard Republicans and the governor backtracking on the cuts that they've proposed in their budget. Unfortunately, their salvation was going to be this pot of gold that was going to appear in an April revenue report. And now that that has failed to materialize, I hope my colleagues on the other side will really, see the light that, if it's a priority, then it should be a priority. Before you expand statewide private voucher schools, maybe you should invest in our public schools. Instead of gutting funding for our UW system, maybe it's time to look at what just about all of our neighboring states have done and take the federal Medicaid expansion because it's good for healthcare access, it's good for our state budget, and it's good for our economy. So, today's disappointing for those that were hoping for a pot of gold, but the reality is we have many options available to us, and we're in this mess because the governor failed to prioritize core programs that are important to Wisconsin's long-term interests and our opportunity going forward. And we're calling on the Republicans to, come around on some of the options that are on the table within our existing revenue that reprioritize what we've heard throughout the state. That K-12 education isn't just another line item expenditure, that it's really about our kids, it's about our future, and it matters in communities throughout the the state of Wisconsin. That the UW system is not some expendable thing, that it's the core economic engine for our state going forward. So, I'm really, with today's news, there's no pot of gold, and it's time to get serious about how we're going to fund our state's priorities in this budget. Thank you, and Senator Taylor.
Thank you so much. It's a sad day in Wisconsin. And I'm hoping that my Republican colleagues know that they need to jump ship from the presidential campaign concept, the same old policies, procedures, and ways that the governor used when he was a county executive, of that funny math, and jump ship now and take the options that the Dems have offered. We're saying, take the Medicaid dollars, invest in what we know matters, invest in our people, invest in education, both K through 12, as well as our UW system. I don't know where the governor is, so earth to Walker, it's not working. We know it's not working. The public opposes the governor's budget. We know it. Every hearing that we had, whether it was the only 4, which was very unusual for the Finance Committee, which used to believe in going around and hearing from the people, to the many that we had as Dems all around this state, the people said they did not like the budget. Thank goodness our Republican colleagues in some places have pushed back on the governor's presidential campaign hopeful budget that really shows him absent. And they've stepped away from some of those things, but we need them to step up now. Take the Medicaid dollars. There is no pot of gold. That's right, Representative, there is no pot of gold. Step up, take the Medicaid dollars, but in addition to that, save our people. Do what we need to for senior care. Do what we need to make sure that those individuals who have disabilities that are on IRIS with family care, that they know that we hear them and that we're going to make sure that we're addressing those issues. There are no new funds that are available. That's evident. Let's be innovative. Where does that innovation come from? Our UW system. Let's invest in them and invest in our future. They need to quit carrying the water for Governor Walker's presidential bids, and it's time for the governor to come home and do his job and help take care of this budget and to help go and hash out what needs to be done, even with our Republican colleagues and us. We have some ideas. I frankly think we shouldn't have done what we did with recycling. We should be trailblazers in that area. Thank you for being here. It's not working. Smoke signals if necessary.
Questions?
Besides taking the Medicaid money and not doing further voucher expansion, what alternatives are you guys suggesting?
Well, there's been massive corporate tax giveaways that are still phasing in right now that could be delayed and generate millions of dollars. We're talking $226 million that could be generated.
Ag and manufacturing.
Yep, from
Exactly.
just not a full phase-in of that credit. We're not saying repeal. We're not saying get rid of. We're saying just don't phase it in fully. That is a credit that when fully phased in will cost $400 million more than originally projected. So we could do that. That would give us another $226 million. We certainly shouldn't be expanding private school, taxpayer money going to private schools. That's another pot. So if you look at the giveaways, the taxpayer money giveaways to private schools, you almost get to $100 million right there. So there is revenue there. So let's do the right thing. All of this should be on the table. All of this should be on the table. The very last thing that we should be proposing is cutting our educational system. No, states that are improving economically and really thriving, like Minnesota, where they have a surplus, those are the investments they're making. And that's what we should be doing.
Frankly, I think there are some places for new revenue, even as we think about the recycling efforts that we made. I think there are some places of new revenue streams where we could take waste and convert it to be able to help us and help our economy. The point is we have to begin to think about new ideas, and we have to promote innovation. That is kind of void in WEDC's, DWD's efforts, and for that matter, in the governor's budget.
And I'll just say this, if you ask what some of the biggest challenges to getting some of these ideas through, whether it's by, taking the money that goes towards the school property tax credit and actually putting it into the classroom, or not expanding vouchers, or even taking the federal Medicaid money, is, we keep hearing, well, Governor Walker would veto that. And the reality, that's just it. We've got a governor who wants to do something that's popular in Iowa. He doesn't care about dollars in the classroom in Wisconsin anymore. He's just not that into you, Wisconsin. The reality is that Republicans in the legislature will have to choose if they're going to support someone whose ambitions go beyond our state's borders, or whether they're going to do right by the families and the kids, in terms of our communities throughout the state. So, because we hear those rumblings, oh, well, why aren't they taking it? Oh, well, they don't want to get behind ideas that the governor might veto. And that is why, we've been saying for a while that, if he wants to run for president, that's fine. But we've got a state to govern here, and the people that are here that are making these decisions are a co-equal branch of government, and we should be doing the right thing for our state, not what plays in a primary in Iowa.
We're talking about the general fund, not the transportation fund. Would you guys also support potentially some revenue source for the transportation fund that might take some heat off the general fund?
I think we've been saying that a long time.
Yeah. And look, we're willing partners there. We're the one. We follow the Transportation Finance Committee's report. Secretary Gottlieb didn't have had some things in there that I think were reasonable and should be considered. But we need people to lead. And right now they're scared that if we increase the revenue and the governor vetoes it, we're not going to do it. Well, that's not governing, and that's not leading, and what we need is some leadership right now.
So the gas tax hike?
What?
No,
gas
not
tax hike
necessarily.
specifically, or
I
no?
can't hear you.
A gas tax hike specifically, or no?
I think I've heard talk of a gas tax hike, and coming from both sides of the aisle, not just Democrats saying it, not just Republicans saying it. I think that the co-chairs of finance are looking at whatever they can do to fund transportation properly, as opposed to just going out and borrowing the amount of money that the governor has done. But in the end, the big picture of the budget is really simple. Every time you hand out a tax break or a tax credit, it's actual spending. We are spending money. And to pay for that, the governor's cut $300 million from the UW system, cutting money from K-12 education, cutting money from places that we can least afford to cut. And as everybody is set up here, it's priorities. If your priority is tax breaks for corporations and so on and so forth, fine, that's your priority. Our priority is making sure that we pay for our schools first, making sure you pay for UW first. There's absolutely nothing wrong with taking the Medicaid expansion. There are governors who are just as conservative as our governor is who have taken the Medicaid expansion. They're not doing it because, number one, they're saying the governor would veto it, but number two is they're not doing it because it's purely political. Scott Walker, the presidential candidate, cannot go back on his word saying, no, I won't take that federal money. As a result, we have $345 million sitting out there in Washington, D.C. right now that's ours. And that $345 million actually leads to more money for the state of Wisconsin. So it's real frustrating. I don't think we can be talking about business tax cuts. We can't be talking about credits. We should just be talking about paying for our schools first and taking care of those who really need help. And then we can move on from there.
What about the property tax cut? Should that be, that's included in the budget, should that be rolled back?
The $5.
$5. If you look at putting the money that's going into the levy, and actually the governor in his budget address said he was investing in our schools. It turned out that was false because not one penny of that credit goes into our schools. So there's ample money there that was allocated to the levy that could be diverted into our classroom. And when we talk about our priorities are the priorities of the people of the state of Wisconsin. That's what we heard all around this state. Our priorities are not the big campaign donors of Governor Walker, which seems to be what is driving a lot of this budget, frankly. So we're looking at what we heard. We are listening to the people of the state of Wisconsin and saying, look, these are the priorities. We've heard loud and clear. You all seen the polls? A lot of you were at some of these budget hearings. I mean, we're trying to get done the work that the people of the state of Wisconsin want us to get done. So we should be looking at that, because what our schools are telling us is, please, we need more money in our classrooms, and we can do it, and we can fill in these unnecessary cuts.
How likely do you think it is that the budget ends up generally as it is? The cuts to education, the cuts to UW all remain
That's totally up to the Republican leadership. That's up to eventually Fitzgerald and Voss and the governor. If their priority is to leave the budget as is, and that's what they're going to do, then they will be cutting the UW system and not giving them a tremendous amount of flexibility. They will be cutting K-12 education, and they have to run for re-election on that. And the governor has to run a presidential campaign on, I cut the UW system. I can't imagine they want to do that. And hopefully they'll come to their senses. They'll put the brakes on some things. We go out and capture revenue without raising taxes, and we pay for things that we're supposed to pay for. I mean, the ability is there, the money is there. It's a matter of whether or not they're going to do it.
To go to your question in regards to the property taxes, I think I want to outline just three things. One, I think the people want us to do what's going to create the investment in the future, which is in our children and our people. I don't think that $5 cut is, what individuals are more concerned about. What we've seen when they've come out, they're concerned about making sure that our quality education can exist. As a matter of fact, in the worst financial times in our state's history, we've always invested in our education of our people. And so that's the first thing. I believe that that's a Wisconsin way. The other piece that I think is really important is that the governor has shown that he's using the same budgeting tactics he did when he was at the county. He would budget at the extreme and leave the hard work to those individuals who were the legislators there, i.e. the county board at the time, now Republican colleagues. I think they have to come to realize that he's left them out there. And we're throwing a lifeline and saying, we can accept the dollars for Medicaid. That's going to create a huge help. Instead of allowing it to go to other states, because it's not as if it doesn't exist and that our people didn't pay into our federal tax fair share, our federal responsibility. In addition to that, no question, taking the delayed approach to the tax benefits for the farmers would be huge, because it's not that we're saying repeal it, but it is saying that it gives us some additional dollars to do the priorities that we know that will make us competitive consistently. And so for those reasons alone, I hope that now that there is no pot of gold, that they're going to look realistically at where we are and make sure that we prioritize the things that will make us competitive against Minnesota. There are other models of what can be done, and even our neighbors have shown us that. I'm sorry, someone else had a question. Last one.
Well, you guys are blaming the governor's policies for the revenue increases being flat, but LFB's letter says it's because the national economy is slowing. They're citing IHS and downgrading the revenue.
Take a look at the job growth here in the state of Wisconsin, which is almost non-existent. Take a look at the fact that layoffs are happening here in the state of Wisconsin. And then you take a look at our neighbors who have actually invested in what we've talked about here. Again, we look at Minnesota on this particular issue simply because they invested in what we as Democrats want to invest here in the state of Wisconsin, and their economy's fine. They have a budget surplus. They're doing well. We are not. Everything the governor has said that he has needed to jumpstart the economy, and everything the Republican leadership has said they have needed, give our businesses more tools to expand and grow. It's not working. None of it has worked, and that pans out. So I don't buy the national economy as much, simply because if that were the case, other states around us would be struggling as well, and they're not.
They made different policy choices. It put him in a different place. He made choices, made promises that he did not keep. 250,000 jobs, for example. And now this is where we are. Let's quit trying to pretend that those policies and those choices work. They don't. And let's begin to listen and include individuals who have solutions that, frankly, every time we've governed, I would argue that we've not been quite where we are now.
So then what's your top three priorities for whatever money
Education.
there is? What's K-12, UW? Can you tell me exactly where it should go?
K-12, UW, and long-term care. Those are the issues that we really need to keep an eye on, simply because we as a state, those are the issues that we are most responsible for. It's our responsibility as Wisconsinites to make sure that those three issues are taken care of, because those three issues can't fend for themselves.
And for clarity, by investing in UW, we're also investing in workforce, because they are so aligned with businesses and being able to help with innovation and being able to help us to move in those directions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's not working.
But you get it.